Have you ever wondered why so many of us spend our entire lives waiting for a tomorrow that never seems to arrive? How many times have you told yourself, one day, when I retire, I'll finally be free? I used to believe that story too. For decades, I thought freedom was something promised at the end of the road, a reward waiting after years of sacrifice. But life has a way of teaching you truths you can't ignore. My name is Stanley Wolfe. I've carried the weight of long workdays, the dreams postponed, the vacations skipped, the conversations I told myself could wait. And now, standing here after a lifetime of chasing that golden promise, I want to share with you what I've discovered, the truth about retirement, freedom, and what it really means to live. Have you ever wondered why so many of us spend our entire lives waiting for a tomorrow that never seems to arrive? How many times have you told yourself, one day, when I retire, I'll finally be free? I used to believe that story too. For decades, I thought freedom was something promised at the end of the road, a golden ticket waiting after years of sacrifice. But life has a way of teaching you truths you can't ignore. My name is Stanley Wolfe, and after a lifetime of chasing that promise, I've learned something I wish someone had told me when I was young. Tonight, I want to share it with you because it may change the way you live your life, starting now. Let's start with the story we've all been sold. From the time we are children, we are conditioned to believe in a straight path. Go to school, get a job, work hard for 40 or more years, and then, finally, retire into freedom. It's a script repeated so often that most of us never question it. Teachers echoed it, bosses encouraged it, even parents handed it down as if it were a sacred truth. Work hard now, enjoy later. That was the mantra. And like millions of others, I believed it. But what if I told you this entire concept, the dream of retirement as the ultimate freedom, was one of the biggest lies we've ever been told? You see, I remember vividly the day I realized something was wrong. A close friend of mine retired after decades in his office, a man who worked harder than anyone I knew. On his first week of freedom, he confessed to me with tears in his eyes, "Stanley, I don't know who I am anymore." His days stretched long, empty, aimless. The very thing he thought would bring him peace brought him despair. And he wasn't alone. Studies show retirees face a 40% increase in the risk of clinical depression compared to their working peers. Depression, purposelessness, even mortality rates climb in those first years after retirement. Why? Because for decades their identity, their rhythm, their sense of worth were tied to their job. When that disappears, so does their anchor. The disturbing truth is that the dream of retirement is not only misleading, it's damaging. Alan Watts, a philosopher I grew to love later in life, often spoke about this destructive cycle. He described life as a dance, something meant to be enjoyed step by step, not a race to a finish line. But most of us are stuck in what he called the deferred life plan, treating each day as a necessary evil, a stepping stone toward some distant reward. And here's the cruel joke: there is no distant reward. Life is happening right now. Where did this myth even come from? The modern concept of retirement didn't exist until the late 19th century. Otto von Bismarck, the German chancellor, introduced one of the first state-run retirement systems in the 1880s, setting the retirement age at 65. But back then, the average life expectancy barely touched 60. Do you see the irony? The system was never designed for decades of leisure. It was a political move, a way to make space in the workforce for younger men. Fast forward to today, and that same idea has been repackaged and sold across the globe. Corporations, advertising industries, even governments have pushed the notion that happiness comes only after a lifetime of sacrifice. Retirement plans, pensions, investment schemes, they dangle them like carrots, keeping us running in circles inside the maze of consumer-driven productivity. But here's my question for you. How many moments of real presence have you sacrificed for a future that isn't guaranteed? How many trips postponed? How many passions ignored? How many dinners with family skipped, all because you told yourself, Someday, when I retire, I'll have time. Psychologists call this future bias, overvaluing what hasn't arrived yet and undervaluing the beauty right in front of us. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning economist, wrote about it in Thinking, Fast and Slow. We are wired to delay gratification endlessly, convinced tomorrow will save us. But tomorrow is a moving target. And while we wait, life slips quietly by. Days blur into months, months into years, and before we know it, the best parts of our life were spent waiting. I'll tell you something else. In Eastern traditions, especially Zen Buddhism, which Watts often referenced, there's a profound emphasis on the present moment. Mindfulness, meditation, awareness, all of it reminds us that peace is never out there, never later, but only here, only now. Yet in the West, we've been hypnotized into chasing. Always chasing the weekend, the next vacation, the promotion, and finally retirement. But at the end of the chase, many discover their health is gone, their relationships are distant or worse. They don't even know who they are without their job. That's not freedom, that's tragedy, and the numbers confirm it. The American Journal of Preventive Medicine found that the first 6 years after retirement are linked to a significant spike in mortality rates, especially among men. Why? Because routine, purpose, and social connection vanish overnight. The media won't tell you that, of course. They prefer images of retirees sipping cocktails on tropical beaches. But the truth: isolation, boredom, emptiness, that's the quiet reality for far too many. Why does this myth persist? Simple. An economy built on endless labor and consumption needs people to keep buying the dream. If you believe freedom is always in the future, you'll work harder, spend more, and sacrifice today for a tomorrow that may never come. But let me tell you, as someone who has lived on both sides of this lie, freedom isn't later. Freedom is a state of mind available only in the present. Think about identity for a moment. For decades, I was Stanley the worker, Stanley the provider, Stanley the reliable one. My value was measured by my job, my title, the size of my paycheck. And when work slowed, when retirement crept closer, I felt an emptiness I couldn't explain. Psychologists call it identity foreclosure. Committing too early to a narrow identity and then collapsing when it's gone. Without the structure of work, who am I? That's the question that haunts so many. Alan Watts warned us of this trap. He said when we make work the pillar of our self-worth, we reduce ourselves to cogs in a machine, valuable only when producing, disposable when still. And so many of us, after years of equating rest with laziness, can't even enjoy leisure when it arrives. Rest feels like guilt, stillness feels like failure. We long for freedom but feel unworthy of it once we get it. That's why Barry Schwartz, author of The Paradox of Choice, describes this as emotional paralysis. Our expectations, twisted by society, prevent us from enjoying the very thing we sacrificed for. And let's talk about relationships. How many times have you told your kids, not now, maybe later? How many family vacations did you cut short because of work? I did, and I regret it. The logic sounded noble, I'm doing this for them, for our future. But the truth is, life was happening now. Children grow up, parents age, friends drift away, all while we keep chasing. And yet, Harvard's 75-year study on adult development, the longest of its kind, shows clearly the greatest predictor of happiness and health isn't wealth or career or status, it's the quality of our relationships. Those bonds matter more than anything else, and yet the retirement lie tells us to put them on hold. What about health? Chronic stress from endless work hours is eroding us long before retirement even arrives. Heart disease, anxiety, depression, they're the cost of chasing. Nearly 60% of adults over 65 live with at least 2 chronic conditions. Many never even reach retirement in good health. Imagine sacrificing decades for a better tomorrow, only to arrive broken and too weary to enjoy it. That's the cruelest twist of all. So what's the solution? Should we abandon work, quit our jobs, and live recklessly? Of course not. The point isn't to reject responsibility. It's to redefine our relationship with time, with purpose, with freedom itself. The first step is awareness. Recognize that you've been sold a one-dimensional vision of life, and suddenly you have a choice. You can begin to redefine success, not by external milestones, but by daily presence. Are you learning something new? Are you connecting with someone who matters? Are you nourishing your health, physically, emotionally, spiritually? Those are the measures of a life well lived. Start by creating micro moments of joy. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson calls them micro moments of positivity, the small, fleeting bursts that add up to lasting happiness. Waiting until retirement for joy is like refusing to eat until the weekend. You'll starve emotionally long before then. Journal your days. Reflect not on what you achieved, but on what made you feel alive. Cultivate hobbies not tied to work or money. Paint, garden, walk in nature, learn an instrument, rediscover play, the thing children do effortlessly, the thing we adults forget. Alan Watts believed play was the essence of life, that work itself could become play if approached with presence. And don't fall for the illusion of security. There is no ultimate safety, no perfect plan that guarantees peace. Nassim Taleb wrote about black swan events, unpredictable shocks that shatter the illusion of control. The more we cling to certainty, the more fragile we become. Instead, cultivate resilience. Practice gratitude not as a vague idea, but as a daily ritual. Studies show gratitude rewires the brain, lowering depression and raising well-being. Meditate even 5 minutes a day. Build community, because isolation is poison. Relationships, not job titles, sustain us in the long run. And this brings us to the most powerful realization of all, the one that changed my life. Freedom is not at the end of the road. Freedom is not a finish line waiting after 40 years of labor. Freedom is not tied to a pension or a 401k or a bank account. Freedom is here. Freedom is now. Freedom is in how you choose to live each moment. Jiddu Krishnamurti once said, "Freedom is not at the end of the road, it is in the first step you take." So let me ask you, if money were no object, if fear was not your master, what would you do with your life? What would you do today? Because the truth is, you don't have to wait for permission. You can wake up tomorrow 15 minutes earlier and watch the sunrise with a quiet cup of coffee. You can take 5 conscious breaths before diving into the chaos of the day. You can pick up the phone and finally say what needs to be said to someone you love. You can laugh, you can play, you can create, you can choose presence. That is freedom. Life doesn't begin later. It doesn't begin after the next promotion, after the kids move out, after the mortgage is paid, or after you retire. Life is happening now, in this breath, in this moment, in this choice. Alan Watts captured it best. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now, and instead of calling it work, realize it is play. So I invite you, as one who has walked the long road and learned too late the truth, don't wait for retirement to set you free. Don't postpone your joy. Don't trade decades of now for a future that may never come. Freedom starts when you decide it starts. And that decision, you can make it right here, right now. Now take a deep breath. Ask yourself, if freedom truly begins today, what will I do differently? And then do it.